What is up, my dudes? And that one girl is looking for something that's even more boring than her sad life on Instagram. This is Bikes, Beards, and Brews. Let's kick that intro. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Before we kick this one off, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification. New videos are coming weekly. You ring the bell, you know when they drop. Let's get the other stuff out of the way. Want to save 10% on a Cardo communicator or save some money on some Beyond Riders gear or Kemimoto gear? Then you should definitely check my referral links down below. Want to support me and all the do-gooderness like these cool guys here? Bam! Then you should become part of the Brew Crew and join the coffee page down below. Want to know why I'm asking you for money? Well, next to those 10,000 Amazon affiliate links that also go to a good cause is a link to a video explaining what I do with your money. Get it? Got it? Cool. Let's move on. Alright guys, so today we're going to be having a conversation about why I feel like Indian motorcycles are just so damn boring. And just spoiler alert, this isn't going to be some video where I'm just trashing on Indian motorcycles all the way through. I do have good stuff to say about them because they are doing good stuff. But with the good comes the bad, and you know, we're going to try and talk about both and maybe open up a conversation down in the comments and see if we can kind of dig into this a little bit more, see what you guys feel about it. So let's get into all of that. Alright, so to get to the question of why Indian motorcycles are so boring, I feel like we should do a little bit of history. Now, don't tune out just yet. This will be quick, so it's not going to be like high school. I'm not going to make you go through 4 quarters and fail you anyway. This is just going to be a quick recap. So, back in the day, there was Indian, there was Harley. Indian died 100 times and people kept buying it and bringing it back, and then it would die again. It was kind of sad. Now Polaris owns it. When Polaris first brought back Indian, they kind of just went with a very retro look on all the bikes, and they had a very limited lineup, so it wasn't that impressive. But over the years, they have expanded their lineup. They have gone for some better looking bikes. They've modernized. They kind of folded in some of those Victory bikes that they got rid of to go in favor of the Indian. And when I say fold in, I don't mean they actually took like the Victory Vegas Jackpot or the Gunner or the Hammer or any of those other bikes that people actually liked. I mean that they brought over some of the technologies that they were using in Victory or planning to use in Victory and gave them to Indian. So that's kind of where we are now with the lineup. See, very simple, very quick, down and dirty, not too exact. I mean, honestly, if you're going to critique my whole history lesson here, whatever. I'm not really trying. I'm not going to give you dates and all that stuff. That's what the internet's for. So, you know, tune out of the porn for about 5 minutes and go look up your own stuff on the Indian and get your own answers. So when Indian did first show up, honestly, not a big fan. A lot of huge like cowls on them, a lot of very retro look, a lot of like dangly leather pieces hanging off of it. Kind of looked like a 10-year-old girl's bike. I don't know, it had all the frillies and stuff hanging off the grips and stuff, kind of goofy. But then they started getting a little bit better, and they really seemed to put their foot on the gas, and they were really going, and it was pretty impressive, and they were nipping at the heels of Harley Davidson to the point where I feel like Harley Davidson has done a lot of their newer innovations to keep up with the Joneses. Now, whether that is true or not, let's be honest, Harley's not going to admit that to you, but let's be honest, competition breeds innovation. So I feel like a lot of the stuff that you're seeing coming out on Harley now is direct responses to stuff that Indian was putting out and chasing them with. Nonetheless, at some point in time, Indians seem to kind of take their foot off the gas. And I think I've narrowed that down to 2018. And let me tell you what I mean by this. So in 2018, the colors started to streamline a lot more. They didn't have a lot of like out there color patterns, a lot of color styles. So I encourage you to go over to the Indian website and look at their previous models. They actually have a nice little list where they show you each year, and you could click on them back to like day 1 of Polaris taking over Indian. And they show every single version of the bike that they released during that time period and every single color scheme. And it's just one nice little like page where you can scroll all the way down and see it all. You don't have to like click on a bike and then choose all the different colors and stuff. So they make it very easy. So previous to 2018, they seemed to really get creative with their paint jobs to the point where they had some really nice looking stuff out there. I saw a few and I'm like, that is pretty cool. Some of them not a big fan of, but they were really going for it. Right around 2018, they seemed to kind of mute out all their colors and they kind of just streamlined them all. So you got like a red, you got a blue, a black, a white, and some sort of like copper bronzy sort of color. And that was really about it. Every now and then you would see a one-off here and there. Like I saw one that was like Jade Dragon, and it was like this lime green chieftain and stuff like that, but it was becoming rarer and rarer. Then when 2019 came around, they seemed to scale back on the colors even more, and they kind of muted it just a little bit more. In 2018, they also did a lot of the smoke line, which is basically just non-gloss paint. 2019, they continued that trend. So there was just a lot of like drabber colors. And again, if you go to that page, I'll show it right here. Catch that title. I've already forgotten what it's called during the recording of this video, but search that on Indian. You will just be able to go like 2018 and you'll be able to scroll down. And it honestly looks like they just took all the pictures in the dark, because all those bikes are so just dark, drab, and boring. And there's nothing really standing out in the lineups. And that's kind of boring. There's nothing to grab your eye. There's nothing to kind of like pull your eye from one bike to the other. At first, I didn't even realize they were showing all the different bikes in all the different colors. So like if you look at Challengers, it would be like you would see 5 Challengers and it would be like the 5 colors that they offered at the time. Didn't even fully realize that when I was scrolling through it at first, because it's just it is boring and there is nothing to grab your eye as you're scrolling through this. Now, this isn't to say that Indians stopped being creative and stopped moving forward during this time period, because that would not be true, and I don't want to deceive like that. In 2019, they updated the fairing on the Chieftain and they introduced the FTRs. So that was a pretty big year, and even nowadays, they've really expanded that FTR line and they've leaned into it quite a bit, so you can chalk that up as a success. In 2020, the Challenger arrived, and they took the Roadmaster and they redesigned that, although the redesign was really just giving it that Chieftain fairing that they already updated. Kind of like what you're seeing with Harley right now, where they're in between 2 fairings with their Street Glide and Road Glide. That's what Indian was doing in 2020. In 2022, they updated the Chief. So before 2022, if you were to get a Chief, it had the very large like cowl fenders on the wheels. It just had that very retro look to it. And they took all that away. They put smaller fenders on it, they streamlined the tank a little bit, and they just gave it a more modern look. So to say that Indian has not been progressing or changing or putting out new innovations would be deceiving, because they are moving forward, they are doing different things. So this is where we roll into the current years, where things are just getting really boring. And that is, they're not really doing anything with the colors of the bikes, so there's nothing really exciting there, and there's nothing really to separate year to year what you're getting on those bikes. The new models coming out are just repackaged old models, so it's getting kind of boring. The ones that jump to mind are the Pursuit, which is just a Challenger with an extra tour pack, some lower fairings, and they did like update the suspension so you could update it on your screen when you have a payload or whatever, but really nothing going on there. They did the Chief Sport, which is just the Chief with a bullet fairing on it and different suspension. It seemed like something they just had to get out there as quick as possible to take on the Lowrider ST. It doesn't feel like it was really thought through in any way, shape, or form. It was just something they had to quickly slap together to have some competition going. And for the Scouts, they did the Rogue, which is, again, just a couple fairings that they slapped on and they called it a day. Gave it a different name. I don't know, man. It's just boring. It is so boring. On top of the boring colors and the boring repackages, they also have the really dumb naming conventions that they've been going with. Now, I get the original ones because it's a throwback to the original bikes. So when you've got the Chief, the Chieftain, all that stuff, I get it. The Springfield, I get it. Indian was born in Springfield, Massachusetts. I get all this. But then you've got the Pursuit, the Challenger. Let's break that down. The Pursuit is somebody who's trying to keep up with somebody else. The challenger is the person fighting for the championship. These are not the leaders. These are the runners up. These are the people that might not even win. That's why they're pursuing. That's why they're challenging. So these are just really dumb names. I mean, you are one new model away from just calling yourselves the Harley Cook. And you gotta stop this, Indian. You gotta have some better names. If you can't figure any out, go look at what you were doing with the victories. Again, you had the Victory Hammer, the Victory Judge, the Victory Gunner, the Victory Vegas. These were cool names. You had better stuff going. Even the bike company itself was called Victory. Come on. And now you're just like, the runner-up, the tries really hard, the participant. It's dumb, guys. And it's kind of boring and lackluster. The other thing that's been incredibly stagnant for a while now are the engines. So you've got, since 2020, they've been using the 116 and the 108. Those are their really go-to bigger engines. Before that, the 116 was the 111, which was their tried and true. Now I get sticking with a certain engine for a while because you work out all the bugs, it's solid, you start to get it a little bit more bulletproof, it's working, but there's nothing to excite people to want to get a newer Indian when the last like 5 are exactly the same. And when you're doing this with your engines, that is kind of it. I mean, even Harley, they will bump up a few cc's each time. Like, even when you looked at the M8s when they came out, they started in a 107, they went to a 114, they went to a 117, they went to a 121, they have a 131, they have a 135. They are doing stuff to make this engine bigger. They're sizing it up, sizing it down. Even the Rev Max has 2 different size engines. Like, they are doing stuff with their products and they're creating that excitement. So even if there's nothing huge changing on a Harley, like let's say a Rogue Glide, you could still look and go, hey, there's a whole new color palette this year. There are slightly bigger engines this year. There's something going on there. Indian is not really doing that. Even as the years go on, their paint colors, they just kind of go from one model to the next, and they've really just kind of stayed within a certain like wheelhouse of colors. So you've got the same color year after year, or very, very similar. You've got the same engine year after year, and even the technology, it's been incrementally better at best. If we're being honest, they haven't really done anything to break through and say, look, we've got these huge monster speakers that are 1,000 times better than our old ones. We have a bigger display screen. We have better GPS. Now, they have been improving on some of this stuff slightly, and they don't really talk about it. It's not at the forefront, so nobody knows. So when you walk into an Indian dealership, you see a lot of drab looking bikes that all look the same. You can't tell one year over the next. Here, I'll put up 2 challengers right now. I dare you to tell me what year these are. It's not happening. It's not happening. They are the same bike. And that leads into the next big problem, which is, even though nothing's really changing, the prices are, they are definitely changing. So when the Indian Challenger first came out, it MSRP'd at $22,000. It currently MSRPs at $26,500. Nothing has changed. It is using the same engine. It has a lot of the same paint schemes. I don't even think they've updated the suspension. I don't think they've updated any of the audio and stuff. I was on their site. I was looking for something that said like new for 2023, new for 2024. Nothing. So if they are doing it, they're forgetting to tell people, and not all of us are running down the rabbit hole to see what those changes are. Now I realize that they do have some really interesting stuff, and a lot of it tends to be in the Elite lineup. The problem with the Elite lineup is they're only making about 120 of these worldwide every time. So if you are not aware of the Elite bikes, if you're not shopping for the Elite bikes, if you're not targeting the Elite bikes, you're probably never going to see them, know them, have any sort of interest in them, go for them, nothing. You're gonna walk into an Indian dealership, you're gonna see a lot of like just smoke colors of drab red, drab black, drab gray, drab copper, some shiny gray, shiny black, shiny copper, and that's it. They're all gonna look the same. There's nothing that's gonna pull your eye, and that's not good for business, guys. Now, some of you may be saying, well, you know, paint doesn't like sell a bike. It does. It does. That really is the first thing that kind of grabs people. And I mean, I'll use my buddy Dave as an example. When he first got back into riding, he asked me to help him start looking for a bike. He was actually looking for something used so he could dip his toes back in and like kind of check it out. I think he gave me like a $10,000 budget to work with to try and find him something. Then one day he calls me, he goes, "Yeah, I bought a Road King special." And I'm like, what? And it's like, he walked into the Harley dealership, there was a Road King special there that had the snake venom green on it, and that thing just grabbed him, put him in a headlock, and was like, "Buy me, buy me!" And he was like, "Okay." And like, that thing stole his wallet, swiped his card, and that is the bike he has. He walked in, he saw that color, he was like, "This is awesome, this is so awesome." And he just gravitated towards that bike. And a lot of people do that. You'll walk in and you'll see like your favorite color. You'll see something shiny, you'll see something cool, and you'll be like, "Oh, I gotta check that out." And he doesn't have that. They don't. I mean, they have it in the elites, but again, 120 worldwide once a year. You're not gonna see those sitting on the floor a lot. So unless you're actively looking for them, you probably don't even know they are there or exist. And this leads to the final problem, and it still makes Indian kind of boring. They still lack a wide dealer network, although in fairness, they are growing. I mean, I know that they're building some new ones around me. I think that's great. And I know they're building some around the country, which is great, but they are still behind Harley Davidson. Now, I know some of you may say, "Oh, well, Harley has been closing shops." That's true, but you know, when you already have like 5-1 against like your competitor, it doesn't matter if you close 2 of those because you're still 3-1. Like, that network is still bigger than Indian. And that also brings me to the other part where Harley is much bigger, and that is the aftermarket. So there are a ton of aftermarket parts for pretty much any Harley that hits the floor. It is not hard to find these. With Indian, way different. Now, the aftermarket has been growing. They have been putting out more stuff. More companies have been getting on board with this, but they are still far, far behind Harley Davidson. So right now, you're looking at buying a drab bike with an engine that hasn't changed in what, 4, 5, 6 years, depending on which one you get. The technology hasn't changed. Nothing's really changed, and you can't do much to customize it because there isn't much out there in offerings. That is not a good look. But they have started charging you more. Like, again, with that Challenger, the cheapest one, $22,000 when it came out. It is now $26,500 with no real seeable changes. Now, I realize inflation, all that other stuff, but still, $4,500, $4,500 for no changes. Like, come on. You gotta do something there. Indian, you're doing so much boring stuff, and you're just kind of hurting yourself in the process. It doesn't matter how bulletproof your engines may be. Like, I haven't heard as many complaints as I used to, but I'm sure they're still out there. It doesn't matter how much tech your bikes have. If there's no change, if there's very minimal change, if there's no differences in the paint, if there's nothing to get people excited year after year, you're not going to get people in the door to buy the bike because there's nothing to drag them in. There's nothing to excite them. And that is the problem that you're having. You can only put so many different types of like fairings and different like model versions of an FTR out there before people get sick of seeing that. You have to be more interesting than what you're doing right now. You gotta fix this, guys. And it shouldn't be that hard. Again, go look at the colors you were doing before 2018. You were kind of like adventurous. You're not really there anymore. Go look at like the changes you were doing to get to 2018, 2019, 2020, and like get back into that spirit. Like, do those things. Stop being boring. Come on, guys. I don't know. That's what I got. What do you guys think? Sound off in the comments down below. I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification, share this video with friends, share it with family, share it with that one dude you know who owns an Indian and you have no idea what year it is because they all look the same. He loves this stuff, trust me. And I'll see you all on the flip side.